My brother got a car and a celebration. I got a mop and a lecture. Dad said, "This will teach you responsibility." So I quietly packed my things and left. 4 days later, my parents called in tears. "Please come home." We didn't mean it. I, 17M, got a mop while my brother got a car. When I left, they finally understood what they lost. I still remember the exact moment I decided I was done. It wasn't dramatic or explosive. It was quiet, like something inside me just clicked off. I was standing in the driveway, holding a mop and bucket while my parents hugged my brother next to his brand new car, and I realized I'd spent 17 years waiting for my turn that was never going to come. My brother had just turned 16. The car was a sleek sedan, nothing too fancy, but nice enough to make every kid at his school jealous. Dad had his arm around his shoulders, beaming like he'd just won the lottery. Mom was taking pictures, her face lit up with pride. They'd thrown him a party the weekend before with all his friends, catered food, the works. I'd helped set up the tables and clean up afterward. No one thanked me, but I was used to that. I'd turned 17 3 months earlier. I got a cake from the grocery store and a card. The card had $20 in it. Mom said they were saving up for something special for me, that I should be patient. I believed her because I wanted to. I always wanted to believe them. Dad called me over as they finished taking photos. I walked across the driveway, still holding the mop like an idiot. He looked at me with this expression I'd seen 1,000 times before, this mix of expectation and disappointment, like he was already preparing to be let down. He told me that since my brother now had a car, I'd be taking over his old chores. My brother had been responsible for cleaning the garage and washing both parents' cars every weekend. Now that was my job, along with everything else I already did. Dad said it would teach me responsibility, that I needed to learn the value of hard work before I could expect anything in return. He said my brother had earned his reward by being responsible, and once I proved myself the same way, I'd get my turn. I wanted to laugh. My brother's idea of responsibility was remembering to close the garage door. Meanwhile, I'd been doing my own laundry since I was 12, making my own meals half the time, and basically raising myself while they poured everything into their golden child. But I didn't say any of that. I just nodded and asked if I should start with the garage now. Mom smiled at me like I was a good little soldier and said that would be wonderful. Then they took my brother out to celebrate his new car with dinner at his favorite restaurant. They didn't invite me. Dad said someone needed to stay home and finish the chores, and besides, this was my brother's special day. He reminded me that when my special day came, it would be my turn. I watched them drive away, my brother behind the wheel of his new car, Mom and Dad following in theirs. The house felt huge and empty around me. I stood in the driveway until I couldn't see their taillights anymore, and then I went inside. I didn't clean the garage. I went to my room and pulled out the duffel bag I'd gotten at a thrift store 2 years ago. I'd been saving money since I was 14, working odd jobs around the neighborhood, mowing lawns, walking dogs, tutoring kids in math. My parents didn't know about most of it. They'd have found a way to take it or tell me I needed to contribute to household expenses. I had almost $3,000 hidden in an envelope taped to the back of my desk drawer. I packed my clothes first. I didn't have much, mostly hand-me-downs from my brother and cheap stuff from discount stores. My parents bought my brother name-brand everything, but I got the leftovers and the clearance rack. I packed my school stuff, my laptop that I'd bought myself, the few things that actually mattered to me. It all fit in one bag. 17 years of life in one duffel bag. I wasn't angry. That was the weird part. I'd been angry for years, burning up inside with resentment and hurt, but right then I felt nothing. Just tired. So incredibly tired of being invisible in my own family. I left my phone on my bed. They paid for it, so I figured it was theirs. I took my laptop because I'd saved up and bought it myself after my old one died and Dad said they couldn't afford a new one. 2 weeks later, my brother got an expensive gaming setup for getting a B on a test he'd probably cheated on. But I wasn't thinking about that. I couldn't afford to think about any of it, or I'd lose my nerve. I wrote a note. It was short. I told them I was leaving, that I was safe, and that they shouldn't look for me. I said I hoped they'd be happy now that they only had one son to focus on. I left it on the kitchen counter where they'd find it when they got home. I called my best friend's older brother. He was 23 and had always been cool to me, treated me like I mattered. I asked if he could give me a ride to the bus station. He asked if everything was okay, and I told him I just needed to get out of town for a bit. He heard something in my voice that made him stop asking questions. He picked me up 20 minutes later. The bus station was nearly empty. I bought a ticket to a city 4 hours away where I had a cousin I'd met a few times at family reunions. She was in her 20s, lived alone, had always been kind to me. I sent her an email from my laptop before I turned it off, asking if I could crash with her for a few days while I figured things out. I didn't explain why. I just said I needed to get away from home. The bus ride felt longer than 4 hours. I kept waiting to feel something, regret or fear or sadness, but I just felt numb. I watched the darkness outside the window and thought about all the times I'd been overlooked, all the times my accomplishments had been brushed aside, while my brother's smallest achievements were celebrated like he'd cured cancer. I thought about the time I made honor roll and Mom stuck the certificate on the fridge behind a bunch of magnets where you could barely see it. The same week, my brother passed a math test he'd been failing, and they took him out for ice cream and posted about it on social media. I thought about how I'd taught myself to cook because no one made dinner for me half the time, while they made sure my brother always had his favorite meals. I thought about how I'd bought my own clothes with my own money while they dropped hundreds on my brother's wardrobe. But more than any of that, I thought about the car. Not because I cared about having a car, but because of what it represented. It was the final proof that I would never be enough for them, that nothing I did would ever matter as much as anything my brother did. He got rewards for existing. I got lectures for not being grateful enough for the scraps. My cousin responded to my email around midnight. She said I could stay as long as I needed and that she'd pick me up from the bus station. She didn't ask questions, just sent me her address and told me to be safe. I could have cried from the simple kindness of it. The first 2 days were quiet. My cousin worked during the day, so I had the apartment to myself. I looked for jobs, anything that would let me support myself. I applied to fast food places, retail stores, anywhere that might hire someone without much experience. I updated my resume, practiced interview questions, tried to figure out how to build a life from nothing. My cousin didn't push me to talk about it. She made dinner when she got home, asked how my day was, treated me like a person instead of a burden. It was strange to be in a place where I wasn't constantly bracing for criticism or being compared to someone else. On the third day, she sat me down and asked if my parents knew where I was. I told her I'd left them a note, but hadn't been in contact since. She got this worried look on her face and said they'd probably reported me missing, that I should at least let them know I was alive. I knew she was right, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to hear their voices or their excuses or their promises that things would be different. But she was insistent in a gentle way. She said I didn't have to talk to them, just send a message proving I was okay so they wouldn't involve the police. She was right. I was still a minor, and they could make my life hell if they wanted to. So I created a new email address and sent them a short message. I said I was safe, staying with family, and needed space. I told them not to contact me yet, that I'd reach out when I was ready. I didn't give them any details about where I was. The next morning, my cousin woke me up. She looked uncomfortable, almost guilty. She said my parents had called her, that she'd had to answer because they'd called 6 times in a row. They knew I was with her. I felt my stomach drop. She apologized, said she didn't tell them I was there, but they'd apparently called every family member they could think of, and her mom had let it slip that I'd emailed her. She showed me her phone. 17 missed calls from my parents. 12 voicemails. She'd listened to the first few. She said they sounded desperate, crying, begging for her to tell them if I was safe. Part of me felt satisfied hearing that. They'd finally noticed I was gone. But mostly I felt tired. I asked her what she thought I should do. She said that was up to me, but they were my parents and they were clearly worried. I wanted to ask where that worry had been for the past 17 years, but I didn't. Instead, I told her I'd think about it. I spent the whole day thinking about it. My cousin went to work, and I sat in her apartment, staring at my laptop, trying to figure out what I wanted. Did I want them to suffer? Did I want an apology? Did I want things to go back to how they were? The answer to that last one was easy. No, I never wanted to go back to being invisible, but I wasn't sure what I did want. I was 17, legally still a minor for another year. I needed to finish high school. I needed stability. Running away had felt right in the moment, but now reality was setting in. I couldn't live with my cousin forever. I needed a plan. That evening, my cousin came home and said my parents were threatening to drive to her city to look for me. She looked stressed, and I felt guilty for dragging her into my mess. I told her I'd call them. She squeezed my shoulder and said she'd give me privacy. I used her phone to call my mom. My hands were shaking, and I hated that they were. I wanted to feel strong and certain, But instead I felt like a scared kid, which I guess I still was. Mom answered on the first ring. Her voice was wrecked, raw from crying. She said my name like a question, like she couldn't believe it was really me. She asked where I was, if I was safe, if I was hurt. The concern in her voice sounded real, and that made me angry because where had that concern been before? I told her I was fine, staying with family, and that I was safe. She started crying harder, saying they'd been so worried, that they'd been searching everywhere for me. Dad got on the phone too. His voice was different than I'd ever heard it, smaller somehow, uncertain. He said they needed me to come home, that we needed to talk about this, that running away wasn't the answer. I asked him what the question was then. He went quiet. I asked if he even knew why I left. He started to say something about teenage rebellion and overreacting, and I felt that familiar numbness creep back in. They still didn't get it. Mom took the phone back. She was begging now, saying they were sorry, that they'd fix whatever was wrong. She said they loved me, that they needed me to come home. I asked her what they were sorry for specifically. She hesitated, and in that hesitation, I had my answer. They were sorry I left, but they didn't actually understand why. I told them I'd come home on one condition. They had to listen to me, really listen, without interrupting or making excuses. They agreed immediately, too quickly, like they'd agree to anything to get me back. My cousin drove me home the next day. The 4-hour drive felt like driving towards something I'd escaped from, and I had to fight the urge to ask her to turn around. She kept checking on me, asking if I was sure about this. I wasn't, but I told her yes anyway. My parents were waiting on the front porch when we pulled up. Mom looked like she hadn't slept in days. Dad's face was gray and drawn. My brother was nowhere to be seen, probably hiding in his room. My cousin walked me to the door and told my parents she'd be staying for a bit, just to make sure everything was okay. They didn't argue. We sat in the living room, and the silence was heavy enough to crush us. Mom started crying again before anyone said anything. Dad looked at his hands. I sat there with my cousin next to me, and I made myself say everything I'd been holding in for 17 years. I told them about the car, about the mop, about the birthday party my brother got and the grocery store cake I didn't. I told them about doing my brother's old chores on top of my own while he got rewarded with a car. I told them about every time my accomplishments were brushed aside while his were celebrated. I told them about raising myself while they raised him. I told them about feeling invisible in my own home, about being an afterthought in my own family. I told them I'd been saving money for years because I knew I couldn't count on them, that I'd bought my own clothes and my own laptop and my own everything because they'd made it clear their resources were for my brother, not me. I told them about the honor roll certificates hidden behind magnets while my brother's mediocre test scores got social media posts. I told them everything, and they sat there and listened because they'd promised they would. When I finished, the silence was somehow worse. Mom was crying so hard she couldn't speak. Dad looked like I'd physically hit him. He kept shaking his head, saying he didn't realize, they didn't know it was that bad. I asked how they couldn't know, how they could be so blind to their own kid for so long. Dad said they'd pushed my brother because he struggled more, that they thought I was independent and didn't need as much attention. He said they were proud of me for being self-sufficient, that they'd thought they were teaching me to be strong. I wanted to scream. Being neglected wasn't the same as being taught independence. Being overlooked wasn't the same as being trusted to handle things myself. Mom said they'd thought I understood, that they'd always planned to do something special for me, but kept putting it off because my brother needed more immediate attention. She said the car was supposed to motivate him to be more responsible like me. I asked her if she heard how messed up that sounded, rewarding him for being irresponsible while punishing me for being responsible. My brother came downstairs then. He looked uncomfortable, like he'd been listening from upstairs. He said he didn't know I felt that way, that he thought I just didn't care about that stuff. I asked him how I was supposed to care when it was clear my caring didn't matter to anyone. The conversation went on for hours. My cousin sat there the whole time, a quiet support system, only speaking up when my parents tried to make excuses or shift blame. She had this way of cutting through their justifications with simple questions that made them actually think about what they were saying. Eventually, Dad asked what I wanted from them. I said I wanted to finish high school, but I wasn't sure I could do it living here. I said I wanted to feel like I mattered, like my existence was worth more than being the responsible one who didn't need attention. I said I wanted them to actually see me, not the convenient version of me they'd created in their heads. Mom promised things would change. Dad said they'd do better. My brother looked genuinely shaken, like he was realizing for the first time how skewed everything had been. But promises were easy. I'd heard promises before, usually right before they went back to ignoring me. My cousin suggested family therapy. My parents looked uncomfortable, but they agreed. She said if I was going to stay, they needed professional help working through this, that it was too big to fix with just promises and good intentions. I was grateful she was there because I wouldn't have had the courage to suggest it myself. We agreed I'd stay, but with conditions. I wanted my own space respected, my own boundaries honored. I wanted them to sell the car and split the money 3 ways, putting my share toward my college fund. I wanted equal treatment, equal attention, equal everything. Dad looked like I'd asked him to cut off his arm when I mentioned selling the car, but Mom immediately agreed. She said my brother could use their old sedan if he needed a car, that she'd drive it and he could borrow it. My brother actually spoke up then. He said he didn't need the car, that he felt sick knowing what it represented. He said they should sell it and give all the money to me, but I told him that wasn't the point. The point wasn't revenge or compensation. The point was equity moving forward. That was 4 months ago now. Things are different, slowly, painfully different. We started family therapy 2 weeks after I came back. The therapist doesn't let my parents make excuses, and she doesn't let me bottle everything up either. My brother and I have talked more in these 4 months than we did in the previous 17 years combined. He apologized for being oblivious, for taking everything for granted. I'm still processing that. My parents sold the car. The money is sitting in an account with my name on it for college. They threw me a belated birthday party, just family, nothing huge, but they made an effort. Dad has started asking about my day, actually listening to the answers. Mom put my latest honor roll certificate front and center on the fridge. It sounds small, but it's not. My brother got a part-time job and is paying for his own gas when he borrows Mom's car. He's doing his own chores again, plus some of mine, as what he calls back pay for all the years I covered for him. I told him that wasn't necessary, but he insisted. We're not close exactly, but we're learning how to be brothers instead of strangers who share DNA. It's not perfect. There are still moments when I see them fall into old patterns, favoring him without thinking, brushing me off because they assume I can handle it. But now when I point it out, they stop and actually listen. They apologize. They try to do better. Some days that's enough. I think about that night a lot, standing in the driveway with a mop while they drove away to celebrate my brother. I think about the numbness I felt, the exhaustion of being invisible. I think about packing everything I owned into one bag and walking away from the only home I'd ever known. Leaving was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was also the moment I chose myself for the first time in my life. I'd spent 17 years waiting for them to see me, and when they didn't, I made them see me by disappearing. It shouldn't have taken that. I shouldn't have had to run away from my parents to realize they had 2 sons, not 1. But I did, and they do now, and we're all trying to figure out what comes next. I'm still angry sometimes. I'm still hurt. There are days when I want to pack that duffel bag again and leave for good. But I'm also 17, and I deserve a chance to have a family, even if we're building it from broken pieces. My cousin checks in on me every week. She's the one who saved me, really, who gave me a safe place and the courage to stand up for myself. I don't know what would have happened if she hadn't been there. Sometimes I wonder if leaving changed anything real, or if we're just going through the motions until I'm 18 and gone anyway. But then Dad asks me about my day and actually remembers what I said the next morning, or Mom texts me something funny instead of just texting my brother, and I think maybe, possibly, this might actually work. They almost lost me completely. They came close to having their wish granted, having only 1 son to focus on. That fear is what's motivating them now. And while it's not the same as actual love or actual seeing me, it's more than I had before. I got a mop and a lecture. I gave them 4 days of terror and a lesson they should never have needed. And now we're here, trying to build something that should have existed all along. It's messy and uncomfortable, and sometimes it still hurts like hell, but it's something. And something is more than the nothing I had when I was standing in that driveway, invisible and forgotten, holding a mop while they drove away.